Magazine Dreams is a drama film where we follow Killian Maddox, played by Jonathan Majors. He's an obsessed bodybuilder who aspires to one day make it on magazine covers. He struggles with his mental health, likely from a mix of trauma and long-term steroid use, and his disconnect from others pull him into a series of unsettling encounters surrounding a major fitness show. So this movie is a character study focusing on our main character's insatiable thirst for admiration. It's about a guy who is completely driven by his need to feel seen and his fear of being a nobody. He wants nothing more than to feel like he matters. The movie is more focused on his need for admiration as opposed to the price of fame as a concept, because it doesn't really instill much confidence in him achieving his dreams. It's about a guy who seems kind of hopeless. That, and because there's so much focus on his delusions of grandeur, the little lies he tells people, including how well things are going for him, and what he tells the restaurant staff after a not-so-great date. One of his sexual encounters says this loudly: the satisfaction he seeks doesn't come from sexual pleasure, but instead from feeling like he is desired. You see it again in the way that he idolizes a pro bodybuilder that he writes to in hopes of getting any sort of response. He's not just seeking connection, he's also looking for people to see him the way that he wants to be seen. These all tell us that he's hyperfixated on what people think of him, but also that nothing comes before his desire to feel like he's on a pedestal, even if only for a brief moment. The movie digs into the psychology of someone who feels very entitled to that, someone who expects recognition without really earning it, and believes people should think about him more than is rational. That entitlement speaks very loudly, specifically because of how he reacts to the world around him, his lack of accountability for some situations, and his poor mishandling of some of them. There are a lot of complicated feelings that Killian carries that demand a dynamic performance, and boy does Jonathan Majors deliver. There's one scene where he compellingly portrays anger, frustration, desperation, insecurity, pain, and sadness, literally all in one scene. This is easily my favorite leading performance of the year so far. I generally stay off social media, but I have seen and heard some chatter suggesting that because this is a 2023 movie, then he can't qualify for an Oscar nomination at this point. Just to clarify, it's listed as a 2023 movie because that's the year that it premiered at Sundance, but movies don't qualify for awards the year that they premiere at film festivals. They qualify the year that they get their theatrical release, and in this movie's case, it was this year. This is truly an incredible performance that deserves to be in the awards conversation, but obviously it does not come without some recognition of the stigma surrounding Majors. I'm not here to give my 2 cents about the controversy behind his assault charge or other allegations. All I'm saying is that those factors will certainly impact his chances of being recognized for this performance. Those in addition to the fact that this movie has some subject matter that tends to make for some less civil internet conversations. I want to make it very clear that I am not saying that I am personally offended by anything in this movie, because I am not. I don't personally really ever get offended by movies. But for the sake of reviewing this movie and giving people a clear idea of what it's like, I think it's fair to say that there are reasons that it will likely trigger some viewers. If there's any other movie that comes to mind when I think of ways this one deserves a trigger warning, Joker is definitely the first one that comes to mind. Much like that movie, this one follows a mentally unwell character who is portrayed as very terrifying, which could contribute to stigma around mental health. It flirts with heavy issues like societal rejection, gun violence, class resentment, and doesn't always handle them in the cleanest way, so yeah, it will certainly bother some viewers. Hear me out though on why it might not be as problematic as some people might frame it to be. The movie is basically a cautionary tale about the dangers of anabolic steroids. It hinges on our understanding that long-term steroid use is capable of rewiring the brain, leading to intense mood swings and violent aggression, paranoia, and even psychosis. So Killian's behavior isn't just trauma-induced, it's a believable result of someone already vulnerable unraveling under extreme chemical pressure. Without the steroids in the mix, everything would hit differently. That said, there is something to be said about the movie not fully acknowledging the root of his problems. It narratively focuses much more on his general disconnect as opposed to his substance abuse, so perhaps it could have made that aspect feel more intentional instead of something we have to piece together. The tone of this movie is pretty dark to the point where it's sometimes hard to watch. Killian's disconnected behavior is very unpredictable and sometimes unsettling. Some scenes will leave you feeling very uncomfortable, some of them from shock value, others from watching him struggle to function. He is so disconnected that even normal interactions feel tense. Just the setup of some scenes will leave you dreading what you know is about to happen. There are a couple of dinner scenes that are really gonna leave you just inching back in your seat. Oddly though, I actually found myself laughing at some scenes, not because they were inherently funny or because they were bad, but because there was a little bit of relatability. For example, at one point he slaps a camera on a tripod to make some video content, and he really struggles talking to the camera. Boy, you have no idea how much I can relate to that. Even some of his social interactions reveal some insecurities that a lot of us have if we're being honest. Seeing some of those blown up into nuclear examples was strangely amusing. So in typical character study fashion, this film does feel aimless at times. The point of the movie that feels like the culmination comes early enough that there's still a lot of runtime following it. From there, you're left wondering where it's all heading, but of course this movie is not about the plot evolving, it's about the character evolving. That said, it still feels like the plot was just meandering quite a bit past this point, like it wasn't sure how to keep the momentum going once that peak moment had passed. I also can't not say this, but that aforementioned scene, it left me thinking, man, I swear I've seen this exact scene in some movie before. Whiplash. Killian's financial situation also could have been more carefully considered in some corners of the script. I kept thinking, man, this guy can really afford a lot with a grocery store job between paying for this house and some of the really pricey purchases. The house thing not so much because his grandfather is a veteran and could be receiving government subsidies, but Killian still makes some mentionable purchases that make you question how much finances and supporting his grandfather are actually points of conflict. Ignoring some of the loose ends that could have been addressed, like destruction of property and medical expenses, the ending is very fitting despite meandering quite a bit in the scenes leading up to it. Perhaps not the direction some people might want for this character, since because where the narrative goes with him, he's not really the type of person most people would root for. At one point I had the thought, this movie is basically a deeper analysis of some of society's most reduced and broken people. And that thought very quickly took a whole new meaning when in the following scene, he receives a rather alarming package in the mail. This movie makes me think of films like Taxi Driver. It's a character study where the character isn't very likable, but it hinges on you understanding him rather than wanting the best for him or those around him. It's a piece that should give people an idea of what sort of external components are capable of breaking a person and sending them down such a dark road. A big thing that this movie gets at is that the world isn't fair, and I think that's an important thing to keep in mind when watching it. It's not trying to validate every decision the character makes, and it's not trying to make you agree with everything it shows. Art isn't always about comfort or clarity. Sometimes it is just about exploring the darker aspects of life, not to ask you to agree with them, but to offer a different perspective. So this movie had me really locked in. All things considered, I thought it was pretty good. Major's performance and the many layers to peel back about this character are what make it worth a watch. Assuming that the subject matter isn't a deal breaker and you like character studies, this movie is worth the $6 it costs to stream right now. Thanks for watching this review. If it brought you any value at all, please give it a like. It really does help the channel grow. I'll see you later this week with my review of Superman.